Hello, I am so sweaty. Welcome to my channel. I am Eirelyn. Today we are filming a video. We are filming a comparing the book to the show for the show and book 56 Days. I did a video similar to this with Daisy Jones and the Six in 2024, so you can go and watch that if you would like to know the format. I'm going to briefly re-explain it here. I'm going to read the book. Spoilers, be warned, I'm talking about everything that happens. So if you don't want to know, you've been warned. I will read the book, I will then watch the show, and then we will compare. See what's changed, see if there were unnecessary changes, see if there were changes that actually improved the story from the book to the show. We will just see. And yeah, we're gonna read the book first because source material. Gotta read this. And I'm so excited. I'm a little nervous to watch the show because I feel like I'm gonna be a little biased because I love Dove Cameron and she's great, and I don't want to have that sway my opinion, because with my Daisy Jones and the Six video, they just changed something about like one of the characters' like core things. You can go watch the video if you want to like really deep dive into that. So I'm hoping that that doesn't happen, because I feel like it would be really hard in a mystery where if you change one thing, it can change so much of the plot, you know? If you don't know what this story is though, let me explain it to you. 56 days ago, Kara and Oliver met in a, is it Kira? And Oliver met in a supermarket queue in Dublin at the start of the same week COVID-19 reaches Ireland's shores. 35 days ago, when lockdown threatens to keep them apart, Oliver suggests they move in together. Kira sees a unique opportunity for a relationship to flourish without the scrutiny of family and friends. Oliver sees a chance to hide who and what he really is. Today, detectives arrive at Oliver's apartment to discover a decomposing body inside. Can they determine what really happened, or has lockdown created an opportunity for someone to commit the perfect crime? So I'm assuming the body is either Kira or Oliver, and I'm excited to see which direction it goes in. I already have a bit of a theory going. I've tried to avoid spoilers for the show, like I've really tried, but I've got a theory, and I'm calling it now. I think Oliver's the dead one. I could be wrong. Maybe it's neither of them. But yes, let's get to reading. And you've already been warned about spoilers, so I don't really need to say anything else about that. I got a new tripod, so I don't have to lug this thing around anymore. And I can actually like set that up. I love it. And updates on reading. I am almost 40 pages in. It's going great. I don't have much thoughts at the moment. I have like a few, but it's mainly just being like, are they... I don't think the characters are still going to be Irish in the show. And that's a little bit annoying, but it's okay. Thoughts. I'm sitting in a weird position because my tattoo and my cat's sitting on my desk chair, and it would be a weird angle. Anyway, I just finished 53 days ago. Don't jump me. Don't rush me, Katie. I don't even know what that's from. Anyway, I think this woman is planning on murdering him. My points being specifically on these 2 pages. Well, there was a bit ago. She didn't want to use her credit card, which that's fine, or her debit card. And she's like, she'd rather not use it, but she can if she needs to. She'll figure something out. Because I feel like then there's a trace to like who she is if she's like using a fake identity. Right? Suspicious number 1. Suspicious number 2 is she says, maybe this can be easy. I don't think she's referring to dating. Because that just, I think that's the vibe we're supposed to get, is that she's a little awkward and she doesn't really know how to date. But I don't think it's referring to dating. And then it says, any confidence she had in her ability to navigate these waters dissipates. She doesn't have a clue what she's doing. She should just give up now. Dating? That doesn't make sense. Like, I don't get it. And the fact that he's been in Dublin for 6 weeks and she's just been in Dublin for 1 is too suspicious. And I called it from the beginning. I said, because this back is like, yeah, he might have a past. Oliver sees a chance to hide who and what he really is. Hey! So, I think he's done something to her in the past. Or somebody she knows in the past. And she's out for revenge. But she doesn't really know what she's doing. She's just like, I'm mad.
and I'm here, you know? Because it's like, yeah, there's one body decomposing inside an apartment. It's perfectly setting it up to be him. And if it's not him, I don't think it's going to be her. Then it's like, who is it? Chester, you can't dig inside the chair. Anyway, I'm going to keep reading. Because I have suspicions, and I'm suspicious of her.
You're balancing. I don't know how. I'm so confused. Okay. So she's still suspicious to me, right? She, like, there was a weird thing. It was easier than she thought it would be, but there's no solid ground on the other side. She doesn't care. She lifts her face to his and kisses him. But that still sounds suspicious, right? But now we went back 56 days ago to the supermarket where they met. And he's going on about being like, my identity. He's like, I type into the search bar his actual given name. I'm like, so your name's not actually Oliver? Who are you, sir? What's happening? I'm so confused. I'm like, when did this happen? What is going on? And he's like, I moved back. I thought enough time had passed. And for him to be yesterday's news, nobody should be like interested in him. It's like only people who know or have contact with him are his brother, who can be trusted, and Dan, who is professionally obligated to be. Like, are you in witness protection program? Like, who are you? It's like, in her point of view, she's clearly like pretending not to know who he is, but I think there's gonna be a plot twist and she'll know who he is. Who is Oliver? And then the way he's trying to dig for information to be like, how do I know you? Do you know who I am? Okay, so we are 186 pages in. They just discovered Oliver's name, and the main detective, Lee, is like, this name sounds familiar, calls a guy named Bill O'Lear, which seems suspicious. And then it's like, oh yeah, I think he might be dead. So I feel like there's confirmation that he is the one that is dead. Like, it just feels correct. Like, I don't think she's dead. Yes. And at the end of this chapter, she goes to her partner, Carl, and goes, do you remember the Mill River case? And I tried to do the math last night when I was reading, and I believe he was 13 when whatever this happened. Which, don't know what he did. And then he's now mentioned somebody, Lucy, where he's like, this is what happened with Lucy. Like, what are you doing to these women? And it's like, is he like he has these compulsions almost and he can't help himself? I'm like, what's happening? I have so many questions. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I just want answers. And then, yeah, as I'm reading, I'm still just like, I wonder how they're going to do this in the show. But it's book focus right now, and it's good. And I can't believe I'm not even halfway through yet. Like, I got to pick up the pace. So I'm going to do that, and I'll try and edit like maybe 70% when I'm 70% through. I'm updating sooner than I expected because a lot has happened. And yeah, so the incident, from what I've gathered, seems to be that two boys murdered someone, one of them being Oliver, the other one not. Oliver got out of jail when he was 18 on a light, like, suspension and stuff, but all of the names in this incident were withheld from the public, okay? There was a lady with a scar on her neck that, like, talked to Oliver briefly after he had a mini freak out after their first date. Not, like, after his first date with Kira. I really hope I'm saying her name right. This same girl with the scar just met Kira, and she lives in the apartment building, and then she, in real time, she just met up with a cop, and she's a journalist, and she thinks it's her fault. But now, Kira went back to her apartment, called from a different phone her sister, which earlier she said she was an only child, which means she did lie. And then she was asking her sister if she thinks somebody can change, like, at their core, which to me shows like she actually knows who Oliver is. And she said something about the detective where I was like, what do you mean? Where it's like, she doesn't want to risk meeting with that Laura woman again. Not until she decides what she's going to do about her. What does that mean? I have so many questions and theories and thoughts, and you know, I want to know what's happening, what's going on. He also alluded to his scar actually being from glass, so tell me what happens. Also, he has Raphinol, I think that's how you say it, in his cabinet, and it's been pointed out, and we just got like I'm assuming it's confirmation, because in his brain he says he didn't lie, but he has insomnia, and he uses it sometimes to like knock himself out to sleep. Do we fully believe that? I don't know. I still want to know more about this Lucy woman. I wonder if I had a thought that Lucy could be Kira's best friend. It's a possibility. It could happen. It could be the truth. And I'm like, that would be interesting. So I'm thinking that it's that. Because she had mentioned that her friend moved to Australia without her, and she was upset about it. But I feel like there's something more. I feel like there's something more going on. Okay, so I'm 69% through. Crazy. Looks way more than that. I'm gonna finish it tonight. This is my goal. So she just had a conversation with the journalist lady, Laura, and they're chit-chatting, they're talking, not really though, and she's like, I know, and then she runs away and makes a lie, and what does she say? I sent it to my friend Chloe because she's watched the show, and I'm like, well, obviously tell me. It says, this bloody bitch is going to ruin everything. So what is her plan? What is her plan? So she goes into the apartment right as Oliver's also getting ready to confess some stuff. Not really like fully share everything, but he's like, I'm going to confess some stuff. And he said in another thing that he's a child murderer. I'm like, did you murder a child? Because you were a child. So did you murder a child? I want to know what happened. And there's still so much more. But I have to go eat dinner. But I'm so intrigued of how all of this is gonna happen. I don't understand. I'm just so excited to see where it ends, what actually occurs, what actually has happened, and then also see how the show portrays it all and what they decide to change or keep the same, and how that will affect the portrayal, the portrayal of the show. That's a word, right? Because I think the actor, I love both the actors that are playing the main characters, so I think they're going to do a good job, but it's then just, will it feel like a completely different story depending on what they decide to change, or will it, be very similar with how it unfolds? I think he killed her sibling. I need proof that I wrote this a while ago, but it was a theory. A game theory. Page 83, I wrote this note. Did he murder her sibling or something? Because it would make sense for her to lie and say she was an only child, and also not want to use her debit card because that'll say her name on it, her real name. And then right now in the book they're talking about, sorry, I'm trying to balance this camera, so I'm sorry if it's shaky. They're talking about sending their mom into hospice care, her and her sister, and it's I never knew the same woman you did, or at least I can't remember her. That woman died 17 years ago, which is when the murder of this 10-year-old child happened. Says this will be her second death, or maybe even her third after they trail off. They won't say his name, they never do. But I think she's conflicted because she's actually fallen in love with Oliver. So she's like, oh no, what do I do? It shows, we're afraid we need to ask her some questions. It's about the local boy who went missing. Paul Kelleher. Is Shane in? Could you ask him to come down? Is the other boy her brother? I didn't expect that. I thought the boy was... Oh my gosh. Drama. I'm on the last chapter. And I think it's the last chapter. It's very close to the end. Let me just say, if Kira is Laura and they're the same person, I thought it for a second. But it is it. What is it? I was like, what if Kira's pretending to be Lara for the cops? And Lara's actually like but like, that person actually has to exist though, right? Right? I'm done. And I'm glad that they aren't the same person. That's just a theory on the cops' end, but holy poop, that stressed me out. 5 stars. This was fabulous. I almost, Chester, shush. I almost sobbed because of that ending, because she did all of this for her mom to prove to her mom that she didn't fuck up her son. And now her mom's dying and she can't even actually be there in person to tell. Oh. I will start the show tomorrow after work and see how it compares. But holy poop. This was great. This was a great mystery. I really liked it. It was really good. The twists, the turns. I had a feeling he was going to be the one that died. That didn't shock me. I can say it was just really good. Like, it was twisty, it was turny. The shock of... I don't think I said it yet. The shock of him actually being, like, the ringleader of the deaths and not her brother. Not plural. Just the kid. The one child. Yeah, wow. Was it opening the same way as the book? Who are you? Huh? What is that? This is Laura? Can't be. There's, like, literally crime evidence. Huh? Oh, this is already wrong. What is this? Okay. That is different. I also... What the hell? Yeah, this has to be Laura. Oh, what the fuck? Oh my god. Right? That has to be Laura. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Already, I'm 5 minutes in. So much is different. I'm gonna have to do a big debrief after I watch the show. That's gonna be the comparison part of the video, so stay tuned for that. But I just want to say, I've been saying her name wrong this whole time. It's not Kira, it's Ciara. And I knew they weren't gonna be Irish. I just knew that.
But the account may still be linked to the house on 344 Dutch Neck Road.
Tax ID. Or his social work.
Guys, I will go into way more depth. This is a terrible angle and very shaky. Into way more depth in the comparison part, but holy poop! They have changed so much. I am liking it as its own separate entity of a thing. I've paused. I'm gonna let them continue speaking, but I think they've literally changed the whole... They literally just said he dodged the arrest, so he didn't go to jail when he was... So that's gonna change all of that. That just changes everything. Like, everything. This is a different thing. Yeah, sure, it's based on the book, but the only thing based on is the 2 main characters' names at this point, and you've changed half the other cast's names, so why does it matter? Just change everybody's names. I just finished the show. It's... Whoa. It's 10:30 on Friday night. Knives Out! I didn't even go here. I need to gather my thoughts. I've been texting, Chloe, the bestie, because she's only watched the show, and we're both just like, whoa, because I was saying stuff and she's like, how do I not spoil this? I'm gonna have this deep dive. I have to, like, figure out how to position all my thoughts in an order that will make sense, because they are everywhere right now, and I don't want to just spew a bunch of nonsense onto your brain. But I will leave it at this. I enjoyed the book. I enjoyed the show. Both were amazing, both very different, and I'll get into it. Hello. Welcome to the comparison part of the video. As I titled in my previous video that I did like this, it's the rant portion, which I feel like it's gonna get to a little bit. As I prefaced last night, I loved both the book and the show as their own separate things because that's what they are. I don't even know where to start with comparisons, so I think I'm just gonna go in the direction my thoughts were going while I was creating notes, because, oh boy, did they change a lot. So even before I started watching, I made a note that I was fairly confident in the fact that they changed the aspect of COVID. In the book, the whole book takes place during COVID. It is like they meet right before lockdown and then lockdown happens, and that is the present thing. The book has a big focus on isolation, and if that can drive somebody to worry and be more paranoid than they already are. And it also has a big focus on truth and finding the truth for like yourself and for others, and being like, is this what I needed to heal? That type of thing. Whereas the show has a more centered focus on power and power dynamics when money is involved, and the abuse of power and the abuse of money, and how that can affect everything to do with the criminal system and the justice system. And yeah, I will get more into that. So COVID was the biggest change because I knew that if they changed that, it was going to change the main impact of the ending that happened in the book. So I'm going to just go into that a little bit. In the book, Kiara, our main character, our lovely lady, she sets out to find out what actually happened on the day that Paul Sparling died at the river in where she grew up. And she does this because her mom is going into hospice care, and she wants to give her mom peace of mind to know she didn't fuck up her kid before she dies. And she also wants to know the truth herself because Oliver, our main guy, and her brother Shane both told different stories of what actually happened. Kiara gets to the point where she then learns the truth from Oliver, kind of understands, being like, okay, so if my brother hadn't had died in jail, there was still a chance that he'd turn out okay. And that gives her some sense of peace and understanding. And then basically Oliver gets really, really paranoid, sees the Notebook right when he's about to go to sleep from his insomniac medicine, which they changed the drug from the book to the show, which makes sense why. And then basically he freaks out, and Kiara's like, no, I'm Shane's sister. Like, I know he would have turned out okay. That's why I came here. And then Oliver admits that he switched the stories and that everything he said he did, Shane actually did. And Oliver ended up being like the main perpetrator of the murder of Paul Sparling. And that leads to Kiara simply just turning back on the faucet to the shower, so he silently drowns because he is drugged and by his own volition. And it wasn't like an intended murder, right? She didn't set out to murder him. She did fall in love with him. She just set out to find the truth of, if her brother didn't die in jail, would he have been okay? And then she also finds out that Oliver was kind of the reason why he died in jail, because Oliver wouldn't tell the truth. And Shane didn't want people believing that he did this terrible crime when he didn't. And he just sat on the sidelines. And then it gets to the end where, because it's COVID and she spent these 2 weeks or however many weeks chasing Oliver to find out the truth, to give her mom peace, that when her sister Siobhan calls, she has to tell her mom the truth over the phone of what actually has happened. And it shows and highlights how brutal COVID was for that aspects of, like, you had to say goodbye to loved ones over the phones, and you maybe had to tell them stuff over the phone that you didn't want to tell over the phone and in person. And there's a big line that I think is important to the character that she says, in the dark, though late at night, when she's on the cusp of sleep and doesn't have the energy to tell herself any more stories, she has to accept that she has done the very thing she spent her life terrified that her brother had. That in the pursuit of that truth, she found another one. There is a killer in her family, but it's her. The only solace she's been able to find is that she understands now there might be a difference between killing and being a killer. She hopes for her sake that there is. So she now has to grapple with that guilt while also not being able to see her family during COVID, and knowing that she did all of this for her mom, and she can't even look her in the face when she tells her that her brother was innocent. That is not what happens in the show. And let me get into it. In the show, not only do they age up the characters for Paul Sparling's killing? They make it seem like it was self-defense. In the book, Paul Sparling was throwing rocks at the back of, I'm assuming it was Oliver's head, but Oliver twists it to being Shane's head. And then they basically drag him down to the river, beat him up, and then to clean off the blood, they drown him in the river. These kids, Oliver was 12, Shane was 13, and Paul was 10. In the show, they're all the same age and in high school, and Paul and Shane were fighting, and then Oliver stepped in a self-defense way, whereas in the book, you're like, oh, this dude's kind of fucked up, right? So that's that. That is one of the biggest changes of how that murder plays out, okay? Crazy. The biggest change, though, is that they kill a completely different dude in the show. The therapist, Dan, who had like one scene in the book, is the perpetrator in the show. And I liked that change for the direction that the show was going in. It made sense because I hated this dude. This dude convinced Shane into himself. So kind of deserved it. And it made like for a more little happy ending between Kiara and Oliver. But the lead up was relatively similar. So it leads me to being like, what can you call an adaptation? And it was based off the book, but very, very loosely, where it kind of followed the same tracks, but it changed so much. And it made you want to have more sympathy for Oliver, because even like Oliver wanted to come forward with the truth, but because Dan was money hungry, he didn't give the letter to Shane telling him that when he went to visit him in jail. Instead, he convinced him to. So, it's that. That's the biggest change that happened. Do I think if they could have made those changes and still stuck to the book a little bit more. Like, they still could have changed it to killing Dan, but kept the murders the same. But I guess that it wouldn't work because you'd look at this 12-year-old Oliver and be like, oh, you're crazy. Instead of like this teen that was just doing self-defense, right? Do you get what I'm saying? Do you get what I'm saying? But that was the biggest change that occurred, and I will put my text to my best friend Chloe on the screen of when I was freaking out about it, and because that it works for the show because the show is a completely separate thing to the book. The real only thing that's the same with the book to the show is that the main characters have the same names. But even then, they have, like in the book, Kiara is her real name. She just changed her last name. That was the only thing that changed. In the show, her name's Megan, and Kiara's a fake name. I got the change. I understood. But still a little weird. So now let's go through my notes to really like dissect the smaller changes that occurred. The main one that I actually need to talk about, oh wow, we'll go to my notes after, is the detective plotline. So much was added to that, and to these characters, and to the way that they could like spin it on them. And in the book, Laura, the reporter, had a higher like suspect rate, where it kind of leaned towards at the end that it was going to get pinned on her. The detectives theorized that Laura could actually be Kiara, and they were the same person, but they're going to look more into Kiara. But because it was COVID, it was so much harder to actually find suspects, because even like camera footage only went back 7 days. Also, it was set in Ireland, so their crime system is completely different to the US crime system, right? In the show, that was like probably the biggest change, which I will still say, if they wanted to stick closer to the book, they still could have added all those cop changes with sticking to the original like plot line. Even if they wanted to take COVID out of it, it still could have been the same. I think one of the changes that I'm not upset about any of the changes, but it was one that I questioned a little bit at first. So in the book, Kiara's dad ends his own life in front of like Kiara's bedroom, and that would have been a pretty gruesome thing to act out, especially I believe Dove Cameron's dad passed away by his own volition as well. So that change makes sense, not a change I'm mad about, but it shocked me at first. I was like, whoa, he's alive? Crazy. I was shocked when Oliver was the one to suggest the cocktails, because that is not what happened in the book. Kiara was kind of the one that strung that aspect along. Another big change that happened. We didn't know Kiara's background or backstory until like here in the book. But in the show, it would be like here. Because it was revealed to be like stringing him along this whole time. But in the book, Oliver suspected her from the beginning, being like, she's following me in the grocery store, she's doing all this stuff, like, I think she suspects, and that's why he planned, like, going out places. And when she suggested the cocktails, he was like, oh, this is a perfect end, we don't even have to go to the movies. So it was perfect, and that didn't at all really happen in the show. Also, one of the biggest changes is Kiara's motive. As I said in the book, she went to do this to kind of give her mom peace of mind for the end of her life, versus in the show, her family was going to be losing her house. Her mom was alive and well, maybe a little stressed in the brain. She stole money from Oliver. And that goes back to me saying that the show had more focus on like power and money and abuse of money and abuse of power and that type of system. The property manager, Kevin, was way more of a prominent character in the show. In the book, he was there for 5 pages. I loved Kevin. Kevin was great. He was amazing. I was a little sad when we met the detectives, though, and Carl's opening scene wasn't him being handcuffed to the bed anymore. It was a little upsetting. I think also one of the biggest changes is that Kiara was very, very confident in the show. Like, she exuded confidence, or when I read her character in the book, she seemed a little more subdued and quiet and not as, like, calculating as she was in the show. Like, she was just kind of like, I'm doing this, let's see what happens. And that was a pretty big change. Another random little small change that occurred was Oliver was the older brother and he had a younger brother. And in the show, his older brother lived in Australia and had like a wife and kids, I believe. And on the siblings route, they changed Kiara's sister's name to Shyla in the show, which that one kind of made sense to me because Siobhan is a very Irish name, so it wouldn't have made sense. But they also changed her like core character, because in the book she had like a husband and 2 kids, and Kiara was so worried that once her mom passed away, that she would be alone because her sister had this family that she just didn't have. And that kind of also led her to search out Oliver to get the truth, because it was the only last connection she really had to knowing what happened with her brother and what went wrong and why it went wrong. Another like change that I think could have been added to the show without like changing the core structure of the book was some of the sex scenes. That wasn't ever really present in the book, but they added it more in the show, and I think they still could have added that while sticking to like the plot, I guess. They did a lot of name changes that I felt were very random, except for Kiara's sister's name change. That one made sense. The company that Oliver works at, his dad's friend's name in the book is Kenneth. In the show, it's Elliot, but they kept his wife the same name as Allison, which I was like, why? I enjoyed having more of that because it was very slim talked about in the book that Allison was the reason the journalist Laura was even staying in the same apartment building. And it was like a brief little thread and it didn't have a lot. So I like that the show built upon that more. They also changed Laura's name. In the show, she's Jane. Once again, an unnecessary change that I don't understand why it had to happen. There was a scene with Oliver's younger brother where he was watching the show Invincible, which is also a Amazon Prime show. And it really it was showing a weird part that then had me believe that the show was going in like the direction of like, oh, it kind of runs in the family of like the psychopathness of Oliver. Because the kid was watching during the train scene where Omni-Man is like holding Mark to the train and the kid was like chuckling and giggling. So I thought it was kind of going along those lines of being like, it runs in the family. After the ending, I have no idea. Like, no idea why that was included other than to promote Invincible. I don't know. The way that they got Kiara to go and live with Oliver was her staging a like termite infestation in her apartment. So that was the way, instead of it being like COVID and they locked down together so they could still be together. I did not expect them to like kill in the show Elliot, Kenneth's wife, Allison. I didn't expect her to die. That was crazy. Did not happen in the book. I was like, whoa. But that's what I mean by they were adding more depth to the detective plotline to make it harder. Because in the book, Lee, the lead detective, she saw Oliver's name and was like, I know that name. And then called her previous, like, police chief dude and was like, yo, just tell me if you know this name. And then she connected it because when the boys were so young during the original, like, book murder of Paul Sparling, they had their names protected in the press. So they were child A and child B, which that was also a big change, was that their identities weren't protected. So it made it, oh, Oliver also didn't go to jail, which was, like, the change made sense with the way the show was directing, the show was going, but, like, he went to jail in the book and served his, like, 15, 12 years of time, and Shane was supposed to spend more, and then that's where their clash happened and everything. But, like, that was a change that I was unsuspected for, and I was like, whoa, because that's why he needed a whole different identity to begin with, because he was so paranoid about people finding out who he was and being mad at him and thinking he was this awful person, which in the book, yes, in the show, they wanted you to have more sympathy for him. Yes, I wrote, this show is a whole different show at this point, because I was so confused at that point. It was so different. They made Kiara way more manipulative. And that was a change I didn't really know if I enjoyed, because I liked her subdued character a little bit more. All of episode 7 is different because it's pinning it on Dan. Like, it's going in the direction to pin it on Dan. And that, I was unprepared for the baby at the end. I did not think they were going to have a baby. I'm going to close this now. Like, that was wild. That was crazy. But yeah, so those were, like, really, like, all the changes. I think I went in as depth as I could because I enjoyed both, but even the show, like, I only really remembered seeing it in the first episode. Very briefly in the credits said based on the book by Catherine Ryan Howard, and that leads me to question being like, based on what really, like, creates a book adaptation, and how far can you diverge from the original source material until it becomes a completely different thing. I've had this conversation with Chloe where I was like, it almost feels like the creator of this show, could be very wrong, wanted to create a show that was so similar to this book that they had to gain the rights for it. Because if they had changed the names, if they had changed everything, it's a completely different story. The motives are similar, but, like, I don't think I would have watched the show and read this book and thought they were anywhere related if the names weren't the same for at least the two main characters. Like, the random name changes I don't get. They also changed the name of the river the killing happens in. In the book, it's Mill River. In the show, it's Narrow River. I don't get the change for that one either. Like, there were so many unnecessary little changes that changed, like, there was no reason for it. And it was almost like to diverge itself away from the book even more. I was prepared going in knowing there was going to be no COVID. But even there being no COVID really changed and warped the core story of this girl that just doesn't want to be alone. And she's now alone, and it's COVID, and she has to tell her mom that her son didn't do anything, and that she didn't mess him up, and that it was all Oliver's fault. And it's so hard in my brain to separate the two, because, well, I can separate the two because they're so different, but you have one story where there is, like, this psychopathic 12-year-old, and that is so impactful and gruesome, and it's not like I wanted the gruesomeness in the show, but it really changes the impact of them picking on Paul, because in the show, he was like this goading teenager that was like, fuck you guys, like, bleh. And it was just kind of like dudes fighting because of their hormones and testosterone, and then it just went a little too far. Versus Oliver was like, I'm killing you. Like, I am beating you to death and then I'm drowning you. Like, that is crazy for a 12-year-old. And that has so much more impact of being like, it's in him since he was a kid. And versus it was just an accident that happened in high school. And then it was perpetuated because the therapist wanted more money. Like, I thought it was great in the show, the direction, but at that point, don't say it's a adaptation. And I don't even know if they said it was an adaptation. Maybe I'm just the only one that said it's an adaptation. But even saying it's based on, how far can you say it's based on? Because there have been so many changes. And like the core changes. Like when I was talking to Chloe about it, she said that she thought in the book both Dan and Oliver died, but then she realized the way I was talking about it that only Oliver died, and they changed completely who died in the show. And both of us were like, these are two different things. But we were yapping about it, and I was like, damn, this shit changed. And it's like, what at its core makes a book to show based on or adaptation the same, or give you the same feelings? Because to me, if it's based on something, I should have the same ending feeling, which I didn't get. I didn't get the same feeling. I felt at the end of the book like, oh my god, she did this all for her mom, and now she can't even see her mom when she's on her deathbed, and she has to say all of this over the phone, and it reflects how so many people passed away during COVID, and you couldn't like be with your family or be with your loved ones because it was too much of a risk. And then the show was just like, yeah, I killed him, the therapist, because he was coming after my boo. Which, cool, but not the book. Like, there's such a loose outline. And I feel like I'm just going on and on now. And there's no point to go on and on. I could just talk about all the changes. There was random little ones, and then huge big changes that completely altered the direction of the story. I couldn't even say like a diverging point where the show went off from the book, because it was already off from the book the second it started. It's crazy. It's crazy. I highly recommend reading the book and watching the show. They are both great on their own, and I loved both. The actors did an amazing job for what they were given with the script. I don't know if they've read the book. I don't know if they know how different it is. I don't know. If I hadn't looked up that, because I was excited to watch the show before I even knew it was a book, and then I found out it was a book, and I was like, oh, I can make another one of these videos. This is going to be great. I did not expect so many differences. And I thought Daisy Jones and the Six was bad, with just the way that it changed like the core character of having him cheat on his wife. That didn't happen in the book. I thought that was bad. Oh my god. And I thought because it was a mystery, it was going to stick a little more to the plot. It did not. But book was great. Show was great. Both were amazing in their own rights. But when a show is saying that it's based off a book, and it's very loosely based, does it really make it a good adaptation? I'll leave that up to you to think about. Because I have my answer. But both were a vibe. Both were great. I hate to say it. I gave this book 5 stars. But it would have been a little boring as a TV show without some of the added stuff that they did change. But I still think they could have stuck a little bit more to the original story and still had some of the changes that they wanted to have a part of the show. I think my biggest gripe is that they changed just random characters' names. Like, why did that happen? Anyway, I need to stop going on, because I'll just keep going on, and you guys don't need to hear that, because it's going to just be the same stuff over and over and over again. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if there is any other books you would like me to do this with, and if you would like me to change the format where I watch the adaptation first and then I read the book, you let me know. Also, let me know your thoughts if you've watched the show and are shocked by the differences. I hope I explained them well enough. But yeah, peace. Subscribe. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.